Good evening. Welcome, everyone. I would like to call to order the November 6th, 2023 Committee of the Whole regular board meeting of the State College Area School Board of Directors. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Recording in progress.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to welcome everyone joining us in person this evening and those who are viewing remotely. The board held an executive session prior to this meeting regarding personnel, legal matters, and student discipline. Board members, with the agenda before you, are there any changes? Okay, seeing none. I would now like to call on the board secretary for a roll call of board members.
Dr. Anderson.
Here.
Dr. Rayner.
Yes. Here.
Brandt.
Here.
Dr. Beck.
Here.
Dr. Favakor.
Here.
Dr. Duffy.
Here.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Ms. Zidney.
Here.
Mr. Johnson will now provide us with his superintendent update.
Yes. I have one item for tonight. I would like to remind our community that all schools, grades K through 12, will have a 3-hour delay this Friday, November 10th, for Act 80. As a reminder, Act 80 time and days are used for employees for professional development. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. I would now like to welcome Stephen Fowler as the student representative to the board for this marking period. In addition to the one student update this evening, please feel free to provide any items, Stephen, that you feel are appropriate to share with the board and the community.
Thank you, Ms. Brandt. I have several updates. Congratulations to State High student Prithvi Narayanan for being named one of the 10 Pennsylvania finalists for the U.S. Senate Youth Program. After a final interview at the state capitol later this month, he will learn whether he will be selected as one of the 2 Pennsylvania Senate representatives next year. This is a prestigious and highly competitive program, and even to be a state finalist is a great honor. We commend Prithvi for this achievement and wish him good luck the rest of the way. Congratulations to State College Little Lions FFA chapter for earning a silver team medal recently while representing Pennsylvania in the Farm and Agribusiness Management Career Development event at the National FFA Convention and Expo in Indianapolis. Competing against 50 other state teams, team members also earned individual honors. Catherine Kupi, gold, Jacob Copeland, silver, Allison Schomer, silver, and Allison Burke, bronze. The Farm and Agribusiness Management CDE allows students to test their understanding of economic principles related to agribusiness management as well as demonstrate their problem-solving and teamwork skills. The State High boys and girls cross-country teams fared very well at the PIAA State Cross-Country Championships this past weekend. The boys team finished 3rd in the state overall, led by Isaac Opperman, who placed 15th individually. The girls team finished 7th in the state, with Chloe Poindexter earning 4th and Devin Jackson 8th. Congratulations to both teams for finishing the season with such outstanding performances. Earlier in October, State High's Max Wager finished 6th at the PIAA Golf Championships held at Penn State. Congratulations, Max. That is all I have at this time.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Ms. Huff is unable to be with us this evening, so unless other board members have any updates, Ms. Huff will provide a legislative overview at our next November 20th meeting. Are there any other legislative updates from anyone? Okay. The Center Region Council of Governments Liaison Report. Peter, I do not have anything for tonight. Do you?
I do not.
No. Okay. I would like to also remind the public that tomorrow is Election Day, so please get out and vote. At this time, we have time for public comment. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes. For action items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item as required by the Sunshine Act. If additional time is necessary, the board may consider reopening public comment after board business is completed or during the next meeting. As a reminder, public comment is a chance for community members to share their thoughts with the board. It is not a time for the board to answer questions or engage in conversations. You can always email the board at all-board@scasd.org. Is there anyone in person who would like to make a public comment this evening? Okay, if you would just step up to the podium and state your name and where you reside in the district, and you will have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Musser. I reside in Ferguson Township. My husband and I have 4 children in the district and 1 currently at Ferguson Township. I'm here to talk about routine approval item J for Ferguson. I'm currently on the PTO as a committee member, but I've recently had sat as the PTO president regarding mobile ed and having that come to Ferguson as a assembly for all of the students as a reward for achieving the fun run outcome that we had asked. So last year, the board approved that mobile ed was allowed to come and do the Earth Dome. And this year, we're seeing that it's being asked that the board pay for that. And we just wanted to make sure that it was clear with the communication that that is not the case. PTO is funding that completely and entirely and following the protocol that the district has regarding that type of arrangement. We just wanted to make sure that that was set and corrected for your vote this evening, that that's not the expectation here for the students. We're just following the protocol. I had previously worked with Randy Brown and Kevin Stahl for that last year, understanding there's a new gentleman this year under that realm for Kevin, and just trying to make sure that that information is clear and correct. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So hello, I'm Krista Dick. I also reside in Ferguson Township with 2 kids at the elementary school. I'm the current PTO president. And just to add a little extra texture to what Sharon has already covered and what she had gotten approved last year, again, PTO is prepared to pay for this. There is a bit of a deadline in being able to get this scheduled for this year because they are a very popular program, and we're already past part of the initial deposit date to get them to come in December for the school. But also it was misput in a previous meeting that this would be a virtual assembly, and this is an in-person assembly with a dome that holds 90 people. For them to come in and view astrology, learn about the stars, and a very well-known educational program out of Carnegie Science Center. So, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. If you would just state your name and where you reside in the district, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Laura Fulton. I reside in College Township. I have 2 students. Well, actually I have 3. I have a student in elementary school, middle school, and then I also have an exchange student. I'm actually here to comment on item L on the routine approvals. I am also a local coordinator for an exchange agency, and so I have another student that I'm overseeing who currently resides in another district in the area and needs to move into our area to attend. I think there was a miscommunication with the agenda, and it was listed that we're requesting that she come to the district in January, but I want to just clarify that we're actually requesting that she be approved to attend starting immediately following this meeting's approval if possible. She is currently commuting daily back and forth to the Bald Eagle Valley from myself and her new host family. It is very inconvenient, as you can imagine. So I just want to clarify that we are asking for that approval to be effective immediately and not in January. I think that might have been conveyed today, but I'm not sure if that got to the board, so I just want to clarify that.
Thank you so much. Any other public comments here in person? Okay. And are there any public comments online remotely? I don't see any hands raised. So we will move on to information reports, culture, climate, and learning. First, we will discuss the map. And I would like to call on Dr. Bucher, Ms. Merritt, and Ms. Yoder to provide this update.
All right, we're here to talk about, give an overview of MAP, the MAP data. So I'm going to start out with the overview, and we'll be sharing this throughout the agenda. So just an overview of MAP is used for school and classroom level to guide instruction levels, to help teachers get a sense of students' academic strengths and weaknesses. MAP data also informs how teachers should be best modifying instruction through the year to better match with the student needs. Our MAP is data assessments are done 3 times a year. It's an adaptive assessment where students will get half the questions incorrect, and I'll repeat that, half the questions incorrect, and that'll come into play later. There are proficiency projections, but it's not a proficiency assessment like we would for PSSAs and Keystones. MAP shows achievement and growth data compared nationally to students that are like them or similar. MAP is also an interim benchmark assessment, so this is not considered a formative or summative assessment like at the end of the year. So we're really trying to get an idea of how we can use this data to help inform instruction. The 50th percentile is considered the national norm for growth and achievement, so that's the target. So overall, with our MAP data, it is commendable. We are comparing ourselves nationally. We have the higher academic scores. The higher the academic scores, the harder it is to grow a student over time. In general, we're doing really well with our achievement. We could focus more on our growth over the achievement, which is going well.
So we're going to share a number of graphs tonight of this kind of the same data, but different views of it and different ways to break it down. So the next slide shows how we're doing by quartile. And you can see proportionally, we have more students in our district in our top quartile and fewer students in the lowest quartile. Our MAP consultant indicated on this slide that this is something to be really proud of, like our data looks really good. So while we really dive into what's like any little thing we can see that we want to improve on, overall, this is very, very solid results. The next slide shows our growth in math from between last year and this year. These are growth scores for the year. Ideally, we would like to see the orange diamond appear in the blue box, in the blue bar. You can see that in 22-23, there are a couple grade levels that the blue bar is touching it, but it's not fully inside. So that means that they didn't quite actualize the growth that was projected for them. The areas to watch are 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. In reading, this is the same kind of chart for growth over time for last year compared to this year. 6th grade is, again, that largest transition year. So we see, and it's also the year that I should mention in math, they switch tests to the 6+ assessment. It gets a little bit more challenging. So part of that is just some of the transition of that. We implemented academic literacy last year in 6th grade, but you can see again, there's just like that gap that between the observed growth and the projected growth. Areas to watch here are 5th and 6th grade in reading.
So in past years, a lot of times they reported on the mean when we received the insight report. So to get this report with the disaggregated data, MAP takes our data and compiles all of it. It is something that is actually extra. It's not just a report that we can get like our schools and teachers are used to using. So they reported on the overall median achievement data, but this is only looking at state college area school districts. So this is really not being compared with the national. Overall, the gray box in the district, as Chris said, our achievement is considered very high. It's in the 76th percentile. So what they say, though, is overall, our reading was in the 75th percentile for achievement, in the 77th for math. So they placed the reading at below the median of 76% and the math at above the median. for achievement. You can see our growth, as Chris had said all along, and you're going to see it later in the report, is where we want to work. The national average is 50%. We are above that, but just above that. We would really like to see, I mean, ultimately we want to see our growth at 100, but really being digging down and looking at how can we get all quartiles to grow at a higher rate than over the 50% bar. So right now we're sitting in the gray box. Overall, when they combine all of the ELA, all of the math, or all of the reading and all of the math, we're sitting at about a 53% growth. I do want to point out, you see the green box? That is a language arts assessment. People take that sometimes accidentally. They get into the wrong test. So please ignore that. That is a very, very few percentage of students that somehow manage to take the test and get the results scored. We really do not use that at all. You want to look at the reading and the math. That is primarily what our 2nd through 9th graders take. So again, something to celebrate on this is our lowest quartile students is roughly 8%, when nationally the lowest quartile makes up about 25%. So we have a higher overall median. This sheet shows spring of 22 and how we grew our students. So again, growth, not achievement, in reading, math, and overall in the 3 different quartiles. So they break it into the 3 quartiles, as Chris showed on the one screen. In 22, in the spring of 22, you can see that we had green. Really, green is right around 60%, is they're saying is above the mark that we want to be at. And in 22, we did drop a little bit in growth. We are still above average in our lowest quartile, which is good that we're growing our students that have the lowest achievement overall, but you can see that we have dipped down in our middle 2 quartiles and our top quartiles. We're still, in most cases, with the exception of reading, above the 50th. We want to be higher in that. This year in reading, our top students, and again, this would be 2nd grade through 9th grade that took the MAP assessment, their growth overall only averaged 48. So that's another area we're going to look at as we continue digging into the map this year.
The next slide is our growth strong over time. So this gives you a 3-year look instead of just a 2-year look. And you can see in the box, the gray is the average growth, the 3-year median. Our growth is consistently average relative to national norms for reading and math. This is whole district data, so in order to look at schools, which we do, this is more of a macro look at data. We dig into school level to see, and student level to see who needs what, but this is just a big overall picture. Mathematics is the one area in 21-22 where we had 59% growth, our highest growth. The rest of it is average.
So Chris is going to report on the next 2 slides that talk about our gender and race breakdown. We have changed these slides to say race. You're going to see when we were taking a look at this, normally when we look at our other assessments, it is broken down by ethnicity. And when MAP takes our data, they do take it from Synergy, but they are aligning it with overall race. So Chris will talk about, you're not going to see all of the breakdowns, like you will not see a Hispanic there, just because of the way it is recorded in our SIS system with regards to the difference between ethnicity and then race.
A note on these 2 slides from spring of 2022 and 23. There have to be 20 students within any of these areas to give us a rating. When we looked at this, we were really confused because it said originally ethnicity, but we weren't seeing all of our groups on there. And so as we dug into it deeper, we realized that the way MAP was pulling data from our system, it was pulling race, not ethnicity. Again, one of those SIS things that we have to work on. So we have the ability to look at data in lots of different ways, but the Insight report, this data is only based on race. just to let you know that. We do have some ways we can break down other data, but this one is just about race.
You'll notice on that slide, currently State College this year, I just reported out that we have 73% of our students who are considered white. What they did is they took everybody undecided and placed them in the 88% Caucasian. So again, think 73% is what we're saying this year. I think we might have been 74 or 75 last year. But all of the categories in Synergy that are marked undecided, so a child who is Hispanic, but then overall race is undecided or declared any other thing, it has gone into the Caucasian pie within MAP. So we have calls into them. We've worked with Justin. We are going to continue to kind of dig into this to get a better overall accurate reading. And MAP has actually agreed for this year, they cannot go back to past years, but for this year they will go back. They're going to grab our ethnicity so that we can get a better understanding of a true picture of what we are seeing with our data. The last slide is again by race and gender. And again, green, of course, is what they perceive above the norm, making above expected growth. And the gray is really considered the average. So they broke it down. They are saying that we do not have enough population for the other. We believe we do, but this is all that we can get from MAP. So in the spring of 22, that is your top graph. A lot of green, some gray with regards to race, and then also breakdown from female and male. It's important to look for us, though, at the spring of 2023. So this was the end of the year data for last year. And you can see that we are in the green in a lot of areas for male and female within our Asian and our Caucasian students. Our growth, just like we said in all of the graphs, even when we combine everybody, is really average or a little bit below, so we are going to focus on that. We are looking at the African American population, and what we need to do, you can see that we are in the orange, especially in reading, both females and males with regards to the growth is below where we want it to be, where we expect it to be. We've talked a lot. We've got Justin to dig down, and I will share openly here tonight. It is very difficult in elementary to dig down because none of our schools on our state reports or on other reports, because we don't have enough at any one school, can report out on that. But we've got to, I talked to CJ, in our elementary schools, begin to pick all of our students out, different marginalized, and try to determine what is happening, why is it happening. I'm really starting in elementary school so that we can begin to target from the time all of our students enter and really try to get a better understanding with the help of Justin of what happened last year. You can see it's a pretty big dip from spring of 2022, and we don't have the answers for you tonight. We can tell you that we have action plans in place, and we are, again, this Wednesday even meeting with our instructional admin to continue to dig down and try to find out why as we continue to try to make improvements at all of our levels throughout this school year.
So just to summarize what we have, 5 areas that we're going to work on and look at. We're going to continue to see some recovery from the pandemic, the impacts of the pandemic. We're going to do a better job of preparing students for the MAP assessment, and meaning by that that they're supposed to get 50% wrong. It's not something students are accustomed to doing. When they get stuck, they should pick an answer and move on, and the test will adapt from there. Provide professional development about instructional strategies that engage higher achieving students to help them grow. We're also interested in reading at the elementary level the new HMH intro reading program and how that impacts our results in MAP. And last, we need to focus more on growing our Black male students. The summary for the MAP assessment.
Just the summary at the bottom, the last part, I think it's black students, because I don't think the female black students were good either. So I think that should be our black students.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much. Other questions and comments from the board? Dan?
Yeah, thank you for sharing some of another piece of the technical use of the map with which I wasn't familiar, which has to do with the rate of, in a sense, failure the kids experience in taking this. In the way in which they are trying to level out, in a sense, every individual student's performance within the larger curriculum in this way, that each of the kids is going to run into half of the items which are beyond their prior knowledge. And as you're saying, for a certain number of kids in our school district, they're not used to that. That would be something which would be very discouraging and might lead them to shut down, might lead them to guess more. Well, who knows whatever it leads to, certainly leads to an impact on their performance. And so I think just being aware of that and making the students aware of that they should expect that. So I think is really, really important. Thank you for sharing that. That's something of which I wasn't aware.
Laurel?
I actually was struck by the same thing, and I think that as you work with the kids on that, that's a good lesson. We talked when we were doing comprehensive planning about whether we really want failure. I don't like that word. None of us are comfortable with liking that word, but I think this is a good lesson. So it's another way in which is actually a help to them, and I appreciate your pointing it out. I also wanted to say thank you because this report is very similar to last year's report at this time, which makes it easier for board members in the community to follow along. So thank you for following a similar format.
Jim?
Do they have an opportunity to take practice tests where they,
Not with the map.
Okay.
We're really trying,
Yeah.
we give a lot of assessments. All schools do. So this is 3 times a year. The May one, and again, it's not an excuse. In many cases, especially in some of your key grades like 8th grade, they have gone through reading PSSA, math PSSA, science PSSA, in some cases the Algebra 1 PSSA, and then at the very end of May, we give them a map. And again, that is, we've got to find a way. So they're strategizing this year. Do we give it before the state exam since it's a one-day exam? But we don't try to practice because it's really to inform our instruction and help guide us on how we can get better and drill down to the student.
okay, here's a good site, freerice.com. Should have them try that, because
It is a good
that's
site.
exactly the same methodology
Yeah.
is how they work. So,
What is it, Jim?
freerice.com.
Okay.
It is different, though. I mean, all of the tests we usually give, we want them to do really well on. And this is one where they're going to get half wrong, and that can be very frustrating if they're not prepared, really prepared for what that feels like.
Yeah, right.
So,
I mean, even, you just gave the PSAT at the high school level, and my kids both took it and talked about, there are things I never got taught. I'm like, yeah, they're in there because PSAT is given to a range of students, and so yeah, a lot of times they're just not anticipating it.
Stephen?
I'm just wondering, are there any alternatives to the map tests? And if so, have they been looked into? Because I know in my 6 years of taking them, probably 18 total, they always had a bad reputation among most people. And I think that could lead, I know some people clicked through as fast as possible and then took a 2-hour nap. So just like, I know it's always going to be standardized testing and you kind of need that for data, but it didn't have a great rep when I was around.
We do in K through 3 use the Universal Screener of Acadience, which is foundational literacy, really looking at skills. It does have a math component too. There are CDTs, but districts that looked at those a long time ago, they were longer and more cumbersome than the map. So our district,
we use CDTs, yeah. So the other part is now it's gotten better at telling us when people are clicking through, and it will stop the student from doing that. It will actually pause their test and flag the teacher. So we have tools for that.
CDT. Find you out.
CDT. Classroom diagnostic tools.
Thank you.
If they're provided by PDE, it's a free sort of PSSA-like or practice and Keystone-like kind of thing. We used that when it first came out. We tried it. We find MAP to be more friendly and give us more data.
But if the kids are doing that, then it's obvious that they don't care about the test. So to stop them, what, like, what's the point? They're just gonna, what is the teacher going to do?
It kind of slows them down, and the teacher can say, hey, do you need to go for a walk? Do you need a break? Is this not a good day? All of those things.
And in elementary school, in some cases, it's frustration. So we have as early as second grade them taking a reading exam, and they're still learning to read in third grade. So I think that it's hard. So sometimes it's easier to click the button. When we find that, we also can determine, do we want to break these groups down? Do we want to monitor a little bit more? Do we want them to pause the test and come back? At the end of the day, each time we still find that there are children that have taken it faster than we would have liked. But hopefully by having those conversations and getting them to understand, like Chris had shared in one of the bullet points, this is really to help us help you. That is something we're going to continue to try to have our teachers talk to them about so that they really understand the purpose of it. Because if it's not purposeful, it makes sense that they could be just clicking through.
Okay.
Dan?
One of the questions I've had about this process over time has been wondering why, and I'm sure there are a lot of technical explanations for this, but why all the students take all three during the year when you might have a set of students who demonstrate fairly early and maybe often that they're performing well, their needs are aligned with our curriculum and they're making progress. And we may not have to do this 3 times a year. We might do it once a year for a certain subset of kids. Of course, then you have the problem of separating out the kids who don't perform at that level from the others who do. But just in terms of thinking about the efficiency of this whole process and the impact it's having on kids, whether do we really need to assess, and it's just a question. There's no answer to it necessarily. It's easy to give, but that's occurred to me. It's like that's.
There are a couple answers. Can I give them?
Okay, sure.
So first of all, you need to take it 3 times to get that growth measure.
Right.
So they can really see where a student is. And part of what we're seeing here is our top students aren't growing as much as we want. So it really does give us very useful information to work from. So one of the things we have to look at is how are we serving our top level students through MTSS, our tier 2 and tier 3, and how do we challenge them more? What does rigor look like in the classroom? Like, that's one great example. So I think even our top students, it gives us information on how we're doing. It's not perfect information. No data is perfect. But it does give us a useful look that we might not have otherwise. We might just think we're doing great, and
Deb, just want to follow
Sure.
up with an additional comment. Actually, that had occurred to me as well, that the challenge in implementing this system happens on a day-to-day basis instructionally with the kids to provide the experiences for the higher achieving kids that give them that room to grow. Because we're inclined for them to think of them as ceiling it out in terms of their performance level when they're really not. There should be other opportunities out there for those kids. How do we integrate those opportunities into the curriculum?
Just thinking about your upper level students, and if you're supposed to get 50% of the questions wrong, but it starts at the same level for everyone, then your top students are probably having to take the test longer because they're getting everything right and they need to keep right. So is the test jumping to harder material fast enough?
yes.
So that those kids aren't taking this test for 2 hours, because then they're going to click through because they're bored.
The only question they get, the only grade level question they're guaranteed to get is the first one.
Okay.
And then from that question, it will go up or down.
So do we find that the amount of time that the students take to actually complete the exam is similar across the kids at the top, the kids in the middle, and the kids at the bottom?
I think it varies. Some students take a lot more time on the test, no matter which quartile they're in.
Yeah. Or maybe just the number of questions that they're shown. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. Not so much the time it takes to do them, because we don't necessarily want to encourage speed, but are certain kids getting shown 90 questions and other kids get the test done in 30 questions?
No, it's the same number of questions for every kid. think it's 36, I want to say.
A little bit of a, it's right around 36.
It's right
but I
around
think there
there.
could be a little bit of a range
Right.
sometime.
Okay, thanks.
Stephen?
So the the MAP tests are typically given like in chunks of two, like a reading and a math at the beginning, middle, and end, right? So in my experience and with seeing what happened with my peers, the fact that there was typically two like back-to-back days would mean that people would care far less about the second one. So I'm just wondering if like having them spaced out even just by a week, I don't think that would impact the beginning, middle, and end of year like growth metrics, but it might help people feel more motivated and less like tired of the test.
That's a very good point. Thank you.
That's why you're sitting there.
Yeah, that's why you're sitting there. Thank you.
He said that's why you're here.
Any other questions or comments? I had just a couple, okay. I was just curious about the sixth grade. I mean, you already talked about it a little bit, and that was helpful. It really stands out in the data. The first thought I had was, when you see the data, is there some mechanism where you go ask teachers to help explain what you're seeing if you're not able, well, just in general, I guess, just good communication. But does that happen where that communication is occurring?
Yeah, it does. And the coordinator works a lot with them. She'll share the data with them. The Math and English ELA coordinator shares the data with the department, and they talk about it and they look at it. It's really valuable though for the individual teacher to pull up their own students and their own scores, because that's what this is really designed for. This MAP isn't designed to give reports.
Right.
So we have to pay extra to get insight reports to share that with you. It's really to help the teacher see on an individual basis and a class basis where students are at.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It almost feels a little bit like we're trying to glean something from the data that the actual test, as you just said, was not really intended for. So, no, I hadn't thought about that. That's helpful. So in terms of, I mean, I know you said, I think you said focus on 5th, 6th, and 7th grades, and then 6th grade does really stand out. And part of my reason for asking the first question is just thinking about the effects of the pandemic, which again, you mentioned, but I mean, can you elaborate at all on however many years we are now later from when that occurred, which was obviously disruptive for lots of different reasons, and all those different reasons can affect what we're seeing right now in MAP scores, for example, or growth versus growth potential. And I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
So last year, I don't know if you'll remember, but last year when we presented the MAP scores, before we started, I had a slide where I explained that the nation's report card, the NAEP test, was the lowest it's been since its inception. Standardized scores were down across the country, again, due to effects of the pandemic and learning loss, or whatever you want to call it. We did not experience that degree in State College. We certainly have some, and we've been paying attention to that. We've been putting energy, time, and personnel on that. As far as how far we are, I mean, it depends on how you're looking at the data. I mean, we're still a very, very high achieving school, but we don't like to rest on that. We want to, every student matters. So if there's one student that's not performing to where we want them to be, we want someone on that. So I think it's really important for us to think about student-wise. I saw an article that said it's like 1.3 years, students are about 1.3 years behind because of the pandemic. Now that was a wide study done all over. Again, everyone had different models of education through the pandemic. So it's really hard to compare school, like all the schools, and do this macro kind of look. I don't know. I don't know that I can give you an estimate on where all students are right now. I think we're doing a good job catching up. I think our data is showing that, our MAP data is showing that. It showed that last year that we made growth. But just today I was on a webinar with the state, and they said that still the state testing is still lagging behind pre-pandemic numbers, statewide, across the state. So I mean, that's pretty much what I can say. I think we're all doing as much as we can to
Right.
close those.
One of the signs you would see is attendance. Student attendance, not only in State College Area School District, but in numbers of schools all across the country, are seeing student attendance rates out of school increasing. And until we start getting them back into the school on a regular basis, you know, for a number of different reasons, from mental health to, you know, school type of things. I think that is one of the signs of the pandemic that we are seeing, just getting students to school on a regular basis.
May I ask you a clarifying question about that?
Mm-hmm.
So when you say attendance, do you mean like full-time attendance, like a student is attending the district, or do you mean like students who are enrolled in the district and not showing up?
Enrolled in the district, but just not sure.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure about that. Thanks.
Well, that makes sense. If they're not in school, then
Right.
that'll
Yeah.
that'll affect it as well. Laurel.
Just one thought as you were talking about the teachers, and we've talked before about the teachers digging down into this, which is obviously good. But thinking also of what Stephen was saying, do the teachers talk with the kids about the results? I mean, I'm thinking of the relationship piece, and when the tests become a feeling of, I'm just a number, and that's when things matter less. So that may also be, and many teachers probably already do it, but that may also be a way to approach it and to work with, even with the student leadership at the different levels on helping them help their peers.
I think that would be another great growth area. I think some teachers do that. I think that's a great practice to have students do some goal setting based on their data. I think that'd be great.
I just had one other question. So you mentioned that the sixth grade assessment gets more challenging, is what I wrote down. So what does that mean?
So they take, in elementary, the test is developed in bands. So when they hit sixth grade, it's a 6+, it's called a 6+ test. That's the title of it. And so they jump from the elementary version that has the elementary bank questions into the 6+, 6 and up questions. Some schools use MAP all the way through 11th grade. We don't. So the questions go up a lot higher, in other words.
So it's a harder test.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
A little bit, yeah. I would say it is.
Okay. No, I mean, that would help explain the data as well, which is why I was asking. So that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, Dan.
Yeah, this is an opportunity, I'll make it really quick. To the extent that we could take a look at the attendance data and look at it in relation to the grade levels that are impacted, maybe even the socioeconomic and equity-based ways in which those needs are being differentiated. We could talk about what resources we're bringing to bear in terms of supporting these kids and supporting the families. I'm just thinking out loud about this. There'll be real value in our having a better seeing what you see in terms of what you're seeing in terms of attendance and how that's differentiated by grade level, and all the other ways in which we sub-aggregate information, but then connecting it with the interventions. The role of social workers and all that, for example, and reaching out to families. There's a variety of different things that come to mind immediately, but it'd be really valuable to have that kind of discussion in the future.
So a couple of things with that. Probably next month we'll be reporting out on Future Ready, which does a lot of that. Preliminary data looks good. And Justin is going to report on something that tonight, that when I had first come across something called Unified Insights and what it can do, it takes everything, and you can pull up a student and it takes all of their data and kind of puts it together. So keep that in mind when he reports, because there's a possibility of being able to have that a year from now with some of the new tools that are being proposed tonight.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. And thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jonathan. Dr. Booker.
Okay. I think we might be winding down on this one. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And now we'll move on to Power School.
Sure, I'll let them sit here.
And Mr. Hetrick is here with us to provide an overview of Power School as a replacement for the district's student information system.
No problem. Hey, everybody. We're recommending consideration of moving from Synergy to Power School. For our student information system, we initially implemented Synergy in 2021, and since that time we've seen considerable issues with the platform, including situations with inaccurate state reporting numbers. It doesn't send parent attendance notifications the way it's supposed to. It doesn't sync grades reliably with other platforms. So the main focus point is that the platform is failing some basic functionality. And we've been trying with the vendor for a few years to get those taken care of. We're not seeing any noticeable improvements after several years of trying. So what we would like to do is kind of take a step back and make a shift to Power School. At this point, it's the most widely used student information system in Pennsylvania, and most of the top performing districts in the state are using that platform. And our thought process with that primarily is that will allow us to set a solid base for some of the other key components that we're looking at as far as learning management systems, emergency notification platforms, analytics dashboards that we can kind of tie into that rather than one platform that's not really performing any of those things reliably. For this change, we would be looking at an estimated annual budget of $165,000 recurring. That's only $15,000 roughly over top of what we're currently paying for the Synergy platform. And the implementation cost for this change would be about $75,000, but we do have some outstanding credits for some of the other Power School products that we've implemented with some extra time. We got things done a little bit quicker than they expected. So that might look closer to $50,000 as long as we don't use those outstanding credits.
Any questions for Justin?
Deb? Is there any chance we could get a little refund back from Synergy for their poor product?
I wish.
Right, I mean, we shouldn't really have to pay the full cost if it didn't function as advertised.
Sure.
So have we explored that at all?
I will explore it. We have currently some outstanding implementation things for some add-ons and things that we might be able to get refunded for.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Amy?
So Power School was in the ones evaluated last time. So if basically they were more expensive then as well as more expensive now. So if we had gone with them in the beginning, we would have already been spending more.
That's correct. They were more expensive. One thing I would like to point out with that, they are giving us more features than we currently have with Synergy. The analytics piece does include MTSS, which we have some components of MTSS with Synergy, but they also do like digital form collection and things like that that we don't currently have an adequate solution with Synergy to replace. And Power School has also changed since we initially looked at it. So they did a user interface update in 2022 to actually bring the platform more in line with a more modern look. And then they actually made some substantial changes with their Schoology platform in the last 5 or 6 months. So they're constantly improving the product.
And so just for the community's understanding, because I know you've shared this with us a little bit before, that, one of the issues has been some of the federal regulations and changes that have happened since we did this research in selecting a platform. So when we selected Synergy, since then there's been a number of different federal regulations that all these companies need to meet, and essentially what you shared with us is Synergy has failed to step up to that challenge.
That's correct.
So when we evaluated it, we didn't anticipate that this would be, challenges that we had, because they just hadn't come down from federal government.
Yeah, I would say the main point for Synergy with their limited use in the state, they're relying on us a lot to kind of help them navigate the requirements for graduation requirement reporting, for state reporting requirements, whereas Power School has other districts that they can leverage. So we're not necessarily driving that initiative with the vendor, but we can actually use and leverage other schools.
Peter.
Yeah, thank you. MTSS is?
Multi-tiered support system.
Okay, and can you just say a little bit about what that is?
So the multi-tiered system is
Why don't
sorry. It is a system where we look at all 3 tiers of a student's, of a school with regards to the student, both academically, behaviorally, all 3, and social emotional. There are 3 tiers in a multi-tiered system of support. Tier 1, which about 80% of a school's student base should be in, meaning that they are functioning at a proficient or higher level. And then additional supports in Tier 2, usually around 10 to 15% of students need a little extra dosage of something. It could be academically, it could just be a little bit of support like Title I. And then Tier 3 are your most intensive supports. So they are students that are usually sitting a year or a little bit more below grade level. So that system really encompasses, think of the whole child, and then what supports does that child need to be successful in our school system.
Okay, so Mr. Hedrick, how does this perform better for us regarding that multi-tiered system of support? Because I think that the MTSS came into what you were talking about, and then it just sort of like flew by, and I think we're all used to hearing these things and talking about them, but
Sure.
not necessarily the public.
Sure. So the platform or the proposal from Power School includes a couple different modules. So the Power School Student Information System, the MTSS module, and then Schoology module. So those are 3 separate platforms. The MTSS module is going to be embedded within the Unified Insights, which they're calling Power School Analytics now. What that's going to do is allow the district to take data about a student from the student information system and leverage that inside of the platform for analytics, so they can take discipline data, test score data, performance, teacher observations, guidance counselor notes, and use those with interventionists to form plans to work towards improving that student's experience in the school. Where that improves from what we have now, with Synergy, we just have basic state discipline, and they do have some MTSS overlay, but it's more for check-in, check-out. It doesn't necessarily dive into plans or more advanced reporting of that other external data. It's only within the student information system.
Okay, that's very helpful. And my second question has to do a little bit with the timeline. I know that change is hard, and when you are doing another change on another system, when other things are being changed too, it can really tax the users. And I'm just thinking about the teachers. So not just the teachers. I mean, like, there's a lot of people who are going to have to use this. So can you maybe walk us through or reiterate a little bit about the timeline, because I think that's going to be really important.
Yep. So when we first started looking at this, I was actually looking or considering doing this for a 25-26 school year. And through conversations with the district, cabinet administrators, teachers, and Power School, that's not necessarily the best thought process as far as delaying that change, because the system drives map data. The system drives a lot of other connections and platforms. So effectively, if we were to delay this a year, 2 years, 3 years, you're delaying those problems. So after considering that, we felt that it would be best to communicate this up front and lay out a multi-year plan, like we're trying to do in the proposal, where the first year is the SIS, and then we can start overlaying the other platforms, so that the end users understand what's coming, but it's also receptive to their needs. They're having struggles, and we're working to resolve those with them collaboratively, rather than saying, for the next 18 months or however, we understand you're having issues, but we can't help you, we can't assist you. And we're also not training new staff on a platform we know we're getting rid of.
So will Power School, I'm sorry if I missed this too, are they providing like additional training to help you work that timeline faster than the one that you had originally thought of?
No, so that the timeline of 6 to 8 months is their standard implementation. We were trying to internally work through the other ongoing projects that we have to offset the change on the end users. So it doesn't require additional training from Power School's end, but we do have training built in. They'll leverage train the trainer model, so they'll be training our district technology coaches and things like that to help train teachers and staff. We'll do sessions for parents, I would assume, and students to get them up to speed with the platform as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Laurel.
Thanks. I don't know if you saw, I had sent in some questions. I just looked it up. In Decision Ed, we were urged urgently to approve in December 2016. And I remember attending that seminar that talked about exactly the type of thing that came up earlier, about being able to take, for instance, map data and attendance data and splush them together. That's probably not the technical term, but so that we could begin to see those connections. And it was very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5 years later, we did Synergy.
Mm-hmm.
And just at the beginning of summer, we were told, okay, the MTSS thing is coming online, the 504 plans are in, and all of this. And I have a similar concern to, I think, what Peter raised about whether this will be repeated work, how much it can be brought in, and how maybe we are just putting too much faith in it as opposed to teachers getting together and saying, boy, this student is, you know,
Sure.
I don't know. I'm concerned about it, though, because it's a lot of money. It's also a lot of time and frustration on your part, on staff's part.
Sure.
Can you talk about that some?
Sure. So Decision Ed, I don't think ever really successfully got off the ground. And then when we switched to Synergy Analytics, we do have probably 8 to 10 or more dashboards that we have available for administrators at the district related to discipline, attendance numbers, things like that, so that they can look at and summarize. The problem with that, realistically, is its manual process. So we have to create those dashboards. We have to find how we want to construe that data. We have to validate it. We have to check it. The benefit to us moving to Power School Analytics is they have pre-built imports for Acadience, for MAP, for discipline data. So rather than us having to build all of that in Synergy Analytics, Power School will just take that data for us. There will probably be reports that we will have to do ourselves, but it will offset a large amount of the internal manpower that has to go into those processes now.
You mentioned discipline, and I recall being at a meeting where we were talking about some of the issues looking at discipline, that there were codes that were not in Synergy, that were being developed, especially at elementary school, this was, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Will those transfer over? Will that, because that affected how well we could track students so that we weren't just dealing with potential suspensions for 11th graders, but what was going on when they were in 4th grade.
Yeah, it'll transfer.
Are those pieces in there? And they will still be with us?
Yeah,
with the
so
change.
a good way to think about this. So when we went to eSchool, from eSchool to Synergy, Synergy was more of a modern student information system. So there was a lot of work involved in that with getting our information and data up to the more modern standards. Power School is in the same kind of ballpark. So a lot of that work is not lost. It was an improvement towards a better product. So even the interface, teachers are going to have similarities. It's going to feel more comfortable to them than they would have a few years ago because they function and flow as far as like discipline and the codes for discipline and how that data correlates to things. It's going to feel familiar, but it just might work a little bit more user-friendly and actually work. when it's supposed to.
Good. Thank you.
Dan?
Quick question, just trying to understand the history of all this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but, you know, Laura mentioned decision day. We feel like we should call this the deja vu department, because we've been down this road. I'm at this, it's at the end of my 8th year, and I know at least 3, if not 4 earlier times we were dealing with similar kind of question. And the frustration that you guys are experiencing with the present system and trying to replace it with something better. And I hope from this we learn something. You know, what can we learn? I think might be good analytically for us ourselves, even on the people side of this, is to look at this in terms of what were we thinking the last time we made this decision, and what are we thinking now, and how can we vet this program so that we can be confident it's going to work.
Sure.
Am I correct to remember Canvas being in there somewhere too as well? Was
Google
it?
Classroom.
We had Canvas when we had eSchool Plus.
Okay.
Several years
Okay.
ago.
So that was prior to Synergy.
Yes.
Okay, so if I go from Decision Ed to Canvas to Synergy to Power School, that's kind of the sequence that we're going through.
Sort of. They're different. Some of those are different platforms,
Okay.
so they serve different functions. But yeah, so
I'm just hanging on the terms I've heard. So,
Yep.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate your bringing this forward and trying to solve the problem. Hopefully, once and for all, or at least for the next 5 to 10 years. Because these seem to last about 2 years each.
yeah, that's the goal. I mean, technology changes fast, and I think you guys are, especially with the pandemic. A lot of schools had to do a lot of things quickly, and the state, the government, everyone's reacting now with increased regulations, with additional features that weren't there, or things that have come up. So something that has helped me a lot is, like, think of how long it took to go from a flip phone to your iPhone, and we're kind of in that area as far as K-12 education right now. So I think Power School will allow us a more stable long-term environment to grow without changing that core student information piece.
So we're really interested in technology that has longevity.
Right.
Yeah.
That's able to keep up with the recommendations and requirements by the state and federal.
The legal regulatory requirements we have to meet and so on.
Yeah, I reached out to Tammy Burnford, the superintendent at Bellefonte. They have had Power School for 20 years, and she still is impressed with the product. They also offer Tech University for a week where they can get training. So it just shows you their commitment to making sure that things work for the school districts. So
Thank you.
Laurel?
Thanks. This is just really a recommendation coming off of what Dan said about that frustration. When I had looked back in October 2022 at a meeting, I had been asking how's Synergy going, and we had this thing about Laurel's demanding this detailed report, and I finally said, no, I'm just asking how it's going. And what I'd like to suggest is that just as we have regular updates on other things, every couple of months, even if it's just a check mark, to let people know what's happening so we don't wind up with this. I think some of it, at least for me, the distrust comes from feeling like when I've asked how it's going and I'm told, oh, don't bother with that, and then it's suddenly, oh, we need to make a whole-scale change. That's where that distrust has built up with me. And so I think that may be something that the board may want to consider moving forward with a new system, so that at least as problems develop, we're aware of them. And I know you've done a lot of research. I really appreciate the depth of the memo and what you're looking at. But there's also the piece of keeping people up with it, so that it doesn't come as a big surprise that we're suddenly having to redo this type of thing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Gretchen.
Really
Gretchen,
helpful.
I-
Oh,
sorry.
Jim, sorry.
Not to prolong this, but I'm going to prolong this a little bit. So it has the ability to accept stuff from Google Classroom.
It does, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
So
that's
teachers
good.
can continue using Google Classroom. It's called Power Teacher Pro is the
Okay.
teacher interface. It will sync grades into Power Teacher
Okay, that was a little bit more detailed, my version of my question. And then the ability, you said that some of these reports you'll have to do by hand. Is there ability to export to things like Power BI or some of these standard reporting type mechanisms? I don't know that we license that.
I
here,
don't
but
know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I would feel comfortable. I know we can export the data in certain formats. I don't know if Power BI is specific.
yeah, I'm thinking like Power BI or Tableau or something like that, where you can make really good. And then I think one of the problems with this area is vendor consolidation. I mean, if you look at the university level, there's like 2 of these. Student information systems, and I'm sure that's the case at the K through 12 level too. So,
K-12.
I mean, it's not 2; it's probably more like 5.
Yeah, there's a good number of student information systems. I think the difficulty. Power School is the more of the industry standard. Infinite Campus would be another one that we've considered in the past. There's really your vendors that are more for large tier districts, or they'll cover the gambit, and then there are smaller student information systems that kind of find a niche that they work with certain things, and they work with certain districts, and then they can't grow outside of that. So like that's kind of what we're seeing with Synergy. They focused very heavily on IUs when they came into Pennsylvania, and IUs have some different needs than a school district, and they haven't really adapted to that at this point.
Okay, and then final comment, that was a very good answer about the fact that you had to adapt the data coming out of the previous system, and that will actually, we certainly experienced that when we had an interim solution between our 2 student information systems at the university. So.
Yeah, so with Synergy Analytics, a good example, like when we download the map data or the DRC data, we have to actually do like VLOOKUPs to append to get it into the format that Synergy will accept, whereas Power School will accept the native format, so there's no manipulation in the middle.
That's huge. Good, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thanks so much. And I think we're now moving on to the new CTC program. So Ms. Merritt and Dr. Morton will be coming up to join us and discuss adding a new 2-year teacher preparation to the Career and Technology Center course offerings.
Great. So I'll kick it off. We're looking to add a new 2-year program that has recently been approved by the state. We have some really wonderful CTC programs that prepare students for all kinds of professions, but we didn't have one that prepared them for our own. So it's not a surprise that the teacher shortage, is hitting us hard. So we definitely want to help with that and grow our own, so to speak. So we're proposing this program. It would be for 2 years. We anticipate 1 to 2 sections of this based on the survey that we gave students. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Morton to highlight some of the details in the program.
Thank you very much for the time and your attention. Yeah, it's something we're very excited about. I think there's a lot of community interest. I think there's a tremendous need for new teachers entering the field. This is a new CIP code that was just brought into fruition this year. So this is the first year that you could offer this in the state of Pennsylvania. There's a handful of schools who are offering it currently, and there's many like us that would really like to start to offer this next school year or a future year. It requires an instructional certification. So the vast majority of our teachers are already certified to teach it. And I wanted to point out, I think it's a nice complementary option for our students who take our Understanding Young Children, which is a family consumer science course. And we have very high enrollment, and that's mostly 9th and 10th graders. And a lot of them are going on to our early childhood education program, which has limited enrollment. So this could be another pathway for those students.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any questions from board members? Amy?
I know we have limited space in the CTC, but I'm assuming basically you're only going to need like a general classroom probably for this, so we're not going to have any issues in terms of space.
No.
Great. The only other thing I have to say is yay!
I know, finally.
Peter?
Yeah, thank you. And as someone who is taught in a teacher education program, I just really appreciate this a lot. How can you say a little bit more about the role of like the history of American education? Because I see it's sort of there. I know we don't have all the details. Like we don't
I'd
have
love to teach that course.
Okay, so yeah, so the history of American education. Then I also see some about philosophy and the role of personal reflection. So the development of teaching philosophies. I wonder if that will be in there. And then the economics of American education. So some of these are very much things that we do, and some of these are so much like cultural forces. So would you talk about those three things a little bit?
You want me to talk a little bit? I think it'd be really interesting. I would say even through my education as a teacher, I'm not even sure they covered those topics very well. I was being prepared to just go in and teach the way, like as if everybody knew the history of education and why schools were even created the way they were, and why the Committee of 10 standardized schools. So when you understand the history, then you start questioning the systems and the things behind it, and why have we not changed some of those things over time. So I feel like understanding sort of the foundation of where we've come from is really important, because some of those things have never changed and probably need to change. So I think that this class may even give them something they don't even get in college. So I think that's pretty great. I think also having students in high school understand how educational funding is done is a very helpful thing. I don't think most adults understand that either. So I think teachers or non-teachers. So I think that would be a really interesting course to teach as well. So I think it gives them a lot of insight into education. It's not only about teaching the nuts and bolts of how to do a lesson plan.
Yeah, and I guess that one of the things that, we see, I mean, right now, the nation is very politically volatile, and that ebbs and flows in the country. But the way that our schools move in and out of these bigger forces in history, and play roles in them, and I just think that for young people who are thinking about teachers, like even you're just in a classroom, but you're kind of like never just in a classroom.
No.
And seeing that when you're young can be a really illuminating, eye-opening experience. Thank you.
Gretchen?
Carlene?
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. Could you share with the public basically how that's going to help students when they go to college as far as college credit is concerned?
Yes, thank you. So across the state, we're working to get articulation agreements with universities. So as it's being a new CIP code, that's something we're working on, and we have a conference actually this week, Integrated Learning Conference at Penn State, and it's going to be one of the topics we're looking at. And we don't have a finalized list as of yet, but we're hoping to get as many colleges that offer education to get articulation agreements as possible. Also, there will be some industry credentials that they can earn, which can also help them and give them, get them ahead of the game when they go on to college. And I think too, one of the biggest benefits is the opportunity to try it, because I think that's one of the best things about our CTC or any CTCs is you don't really know until you're given the opportunity to try things. And a lot of these students might end up just getting some really great skills out of this and decide not to be teachers, but hopefully quite a few will be teachers. And when it comes to like communication, organizing information for a presentation, teamwork, planning, all of that. So there's so many, we think, great benefits to the program. And yes, the idea though, there should be a direct articulation where we're hoping, I'm thinking like upwards around 12 credits, maybe 9, could be articulated to colleges.
That is something that, in talking with the Secretary of Education for Pennsylvania, that they're looking to do, so that they have their first 2 years accomplished through the high school, and then 2 years in college, so that they have their 4-year degree and are able to get into the profession sooner. So basically, the end of their sophomore year, they're actually able to be a teacher or intern within a school district.
It's like the old normal schools, which were a 2-year program.
I know they're doing something in the Johnstown School District with something like this, with their community college.
Stephen?
Has there been any thought as to consolidating it into a 1-year course or having it be an advanced course? Because I know with like some of the other courses at the high school, at least, things like band and orchestra have been forced to become advanced just so they get more students enrolled in it. So if you consolidate it into 1 year, people who weren't expressly interested in solely becoming a teacher would be more like able to try it, and it wouldn't seem like such a big time commitment. Or if you had it as advanced, the people who, like, I know a lot of people who shy away from like CTC courses because they think it'll be bad for their GPA, or isn't the type of thing that will prepare them for college. But if you slap an advanced label on it, it might be something that fits that criteria more to them. And also, out of selfish reasons, I would totally want to take this class, but I only have 1 year left, so.
I think I can speak to that. That's really great input. And that's the reason we're offering it as 4 1-credit courses, because that allows more students to maybe be able to take it. Not, like, for example, auto tech is a 2-credit course, right? And you have to take it for 4 years. So in this case, if you're not able to take all the 4 classes, perhaps you could take 1 or 2 and benefit from it. The other point is we have to get 720 hours of instructional time to qualify for a program. So if it was a 1-year program, which Diversified Occupations is, it's quite a bit. It's like, I think it's like 6 hours a day or something. So that's one of the reasons we have it as a 2-year. However, a student could take senior only. So if they had room, they could take like 2 of these 1-credit courses, and then they could be placed as a student teacher for the co-op to get another 2 credits. So they could get 4 out of 6 credits, and then they could have their concentrator status and then complete the program and take the NOCTI. And that's, for example, we have students that only finish Auto Tech 3, but it's over 50% of the content, and they are able to complete the program. They just have to be able to pass the test.
NOCTI?
Correct.
What is the NOCTI? No, I know.
Oh, I'm sorry. The NOCTI is the end of program assessment, and that stands for like the National Occupancy Certification Testing Institute, I think. But they got rid of that. They just go by NOCTI now.
Deb?
Thanks. The program sounds great. I just want to ask, you mentioned that most of our teachers are already certified to teach it. Will there be any implications for staffing? Will we be able to use teachers that we already have on staff? Like, this is 1 or 2 extra courses a year. Do we have space, or are we going to have to hire more people?
So we always have to look at staffing when the student requests come in. We're thinking that we would be able to absorb that within our current staffing. That's our hope right now. We're not asking for additional staffing up front.
Right. Yeah. So we're hoping there's no budgetary impact.
Right.
Great. Thanks.
We will need a budget for this program. Maybe, I'm guessing 7,500, maybe a little less, because there's going to be costs. Just like any program, we will have educational costs, but we will not have salary and benefits. And I think one of our goals is to get these courses dual credit. So for example, like the one that is about like human growth, perhaps that could count for a health education course. So that's where we're able to probably do this without having to hire new staff, because we can add these 1-credit courses to 4 different teacher schedules, hopefully, and be able to benefit lots of kids in 2 ways at the same time.
Thanks.
Dan?
Yeah, I realize, and I think this is an incredible opportunity, given the difficulty that we have finding qualified individuals to serve in the classroom, to help build the system, build capacity, build our capacity and that of other school districts and so on, to meet the needs of our kids going forward. At the same time, as I think about this, think about our relationship to teacher education programs in general. And for a good number of years, we participated with the professional development schools, which had us serving as partners with the higher education systems by providing more experiences for students who are college students, basically finishing their last year, and working with us to have a richer experience by giving them more things to do, basically, and setting higher expectations for those individuals. And that would have added effort, if not time, to their programs. Here, what we're doing is, now that there's a shortage, the pendulum's going the other way, and we're going to try to amass all the experiences that those earlier students would have acquired in 4 to 5 years of higher education, have it occur during their high school career, and then have them leave with some kind of a credential. It's like, where's the quality control on all this? I'm really concerned about the fact that we, with the best of intentions, and developmentally, the readiness of young people to take on the responsibilities and take on the learning required for this kind of work. Is the system, and I mean, you guys, I'm talking about the state, basically. The state's authorizing this. What thought has been given to the professional responsibility to prepare people to work in the classroom with, by those who have, with giving people the proper preparation to do that complicated work? Because teaching is not easy. It's an incredibly complicated task. So I just want to say that out loud. Are you getting any feedback from PDE or from others involved with this, with the leadership on all this?
Yeah, one of the options we're looking at is running through it's called the Educator Rising program, and it's been around for a while, and that would be part of that cost I mentioned. We would probably want to purchase that curriculum. We think that would really help, especially if we have 4 different teachers teaching it. It would be nice to have something structured that we're kind of working in the same direction. So that the PSEA, the PA State Educators Association, promotes that model, and that seems like that'd be a really good option. It's something people have been working on for quite a long time. If you've ever heard Grow Your Own program, that's the other thing. We really think this could help with some of our students that could be underrepresented populations. This might help get them into the system as teachers and be comfortable, and it'd be wonderful for our school. And with the budget, it would be not responsible to not point out that we get subsidies for these students. So we would be getting vocational subsidies. So I'm kind of estimating about how much we would get in subsidies, and I think that would be fair to put that money back into educational costs.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Board.
Okay, Stephen?
I just want to say I really like the idea of having it be part of an alternative to the health programs. I feel like the lack of options means that it seems like a chore if it's not something you're interested in. But I think putting it under the health curriculum would be a great way to bridge the gap and get more people interested in teaching. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
So we plan to bring this forward to the board for action at the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to facilities and grounds. We will welcome Mr. Brown and Mr. Fisher, and they will provide an update on the district-wide facilities master plan and the Mount Nittany Elementary addition.
This evening as well, as she continues to work very closely with us on the Mount Nittany project. Just wanted to give you an update, provide the community an update with our progress thus far on the Mount Nittany Elementary project. Attached or included in your attachment this evening is our project calendar, design calendar. We expect to have an update on that calendar at the next board meeting, at the next committee of the whole meeting in December, when Mr. Straub from Crabtree will be with us to provide an even more in-depth update and to show you our latest design plan for the project. We are in the process. Last week, we met with Dr. Pringle from Special Education and Mr. Feldman, the building principal, to finalize our building layout design so that we can begin our 30-60-90 design process, where there will be certain parts of the building that will meet of the project that will be completed to a certain level, and then that will continue on through the project. Next week, there will be a faculty meeting where the staff at Mount Nittany L will see the latest project design plans so that they can provide additional input into the layout and to see where their input thus far has come into play. This will also include some of the folks at Easterly Parkway that would be that we are proposing to move over to the Mount Nittany project. I'm seeing by your nods and your affirmations that this is information that you have heard or are expecting to hear, which is very good. That means that we're all being very communicative and part of the process, which is very important because we want the community to understand that this is a unified project that we are working together on. Also next week, Mr. Fisher will be scheduling a CAC for facilities meeting where he will go over the design layout to date and ask for their input as well. Obviously, the Mount Nittany project is a little bit different because it is an addition. So we are adding scope to an existing building. We're trying to keep it so that it's not noticeable that the building will have an addition. So it will be very consistent throughout. And most of the scope changes that are coming into that project are ones that we've already seen or added in our latest 3 elementary projects. Again, shouldn't be a surprise to any of you, but just wanted to make that comparison. And then Mr. Feldman will also be going to the Mount Nittany Elementary PTO meeting to show that plan to them as well. The reason we're having all of those stakeholder inputs before it comes back to you all is is there anything from those various stakeholder groups that we've missed that are important to the project, we can have a time to reflect on those before it comes to you, where we kind of set the marker on this is the floor plan, and then we'll begin the 30-60-90 progress. A future design, in addition to that design, there'll be future discussion items with the board regarding a consideration for a commissioning agent, an updated design schedule, as I said, the 30-60-90 review expectations, and then also a traffic assessment and site survey results we'll be sharing with you as well. Any questions on the Mount Nittany project? Just as a reminder before I give you an opportunity to respond, there is a website for the project. It has been updated as recently as this weekend to make sure that we have a good summary of our work to date. And if not already, all of the different reports to the board and different committees that have been provided will be added later this week.
I'll just add one thing to that, Randy, before we go to questions, which is that website page is is such a good idea because instead of, for example, CAC members or members of the public or board members having to go to all those individual agendas and searching through trying to find those items, this is a facilities page that all of the projects that are currently being worked on, all of the agenda items from those past discussions or current discussions will be available there without, you don't need a password, nothing like that. So that was one of the things that came out of the last CAC for Facilities meeting, which was really helpful. So it's not only helpful to those members, but to everyone in the district. So I just thought I'd communicate that. But any questions for Randy or Mike?
Not on that.
Okay. Danielle, did
Not
you
on
have
this,
anything
okay.
you wanted to say from an instructional side?
I know, I'm excited. It'll be good to get the staff feedback. Every time somebody looks at it, they find changes that we didn't consider, but everything has been, I think, very positive so far.
Absolutely.
And really excited for some of the inclusive spaces that are planned. Very, in my opinion, needed, so I am thrilled for it to be happening.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, then we will move on to the power purchase agreement update.
No.
The second item in the memo.
Oh, I'm
relates
sorry.
to the district-wide
In that memo, we didn't talk about the district-wide facility.
Oh,
master.
sorry, I'm sorry.
Nope, you're fine. So,
Me too.
just wanted to, again, we'll have a further update there. We are waiting for, we are working with the engineering and design team through the architects to begin our site surveys of different properties, and they're going to be looking at completing engineering studies in all of our buildings as well. So that's part of the project, the district-wide facility master plan project. That will not only aid designing a Park Forest Elementary, or I'm sorry, Park Forest Middle School, excuse me. It will, I was just talking about elementary. It will also help us with future projects that we want to make sure that we have the wherewithal and have on our horizon. But also, it's going to be helping our deferred maintenance schedule, our capital projects, improvement forecasting and budgeting. So we're very excited about that work. Again, that information will be, we expect to have information about that progress on December the 4th. Again, we want to have a steering committee, and so we're working on putting together what that actually looks like and beginning some invitations. If you, members of the board, have suggestions, please feel free to send them to myself or Mr. Fisher or Mr. Johnson. We can talk through that. But again, as I said, that we're using different stakeholder groups for the Mount Nittany Elementary project. We'll be doing that same thing for this project, and we'll be planning out those opportunities in the very near future as well. I think, again, there's a project website. Mr. Fisher, did I miss anything?
With regard to the website, bear with us. We are kind of auditing the entire facilities website, and we're going to try to revamp that so that it's nicer and a little more user-friendly. So just know that is currently in the works.
Thank you. Okay, questions about the master plan? Dan?
Randy, thank you, Mike. Good to see you guys. Thanks for catching us up on both of these topics. The one that has occurred to me as I was reading through the memo was related to the importance of, to the extent that we can, that we are coherent and congruent in terms of our activities in relation to not just the future, and looking at the needs, for example, in terms of the middle school on the north side of town, but also looking retroactively in terms of the work of the district and the board in the past, in terms of the middle level instruction. There was a substantial investment on the part of the school district just prior to COVID that related to the middle level model review. And there were a lot of people who spent time, including members of the community, who came and joined us, and we had discussions and in relation to looking at, among other things, facilities, what kinds of model facilities we would want to consider in terms of looking at the delivery of middle-level instruction in the school district. And we traveled and visited a half dozen different sites in the state. So my question is, to what extent, and that was with in a pre-COVID era. It's not since, so our priorities have changed somewhat. We also have a new chief administrator, and that there's a voice to be given to that perception of things. So, but I'm wondering whether experiences or maybe even looking back at those who participated in those discussions by the middle level review process, people who might then bring some information or some experience to this steering committee. I'm just wondering out loud about this, and whether or not there's anything that was learned from that review process that might apply to the master planning process.
You want to speak to that?
So, when I was assistant superintendent, I had a chance to review the middle level review. A lot of the things that I was able to obtain through that review, I was able to implement as the assistant superintendent with the changing of the schedule, unifying the schedules, providing interventionists among at the middle level level to help out those students that are in need, to help with the MTSS process. So a lot of the things that were seen in there, I was able to implement. So I used that as part of the process to make those changes. So yes.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We had never had a chance to talk about this out loud. Thank you.
Laurel.
I had noticed the piece about the steering committee, and I think that is an excellent idea. I'll forward to the entire board. One of the workshops I went to at the PSBA conference, I just double-checked the title because it was such a neat title, Planning, Procuring, and Executing the Perfect School Construction Project. And there were a number of ideas in there, one of which was that idea of a comprehensive steering committee. And I think it will be a very good thing. The only thing I would urge is that not only asking the board, but working to let members of the community know about this opportunity so that they might apply, because there may be hidden talents out there we're not aware of and who don't tune in Monday nights to board meetings.
That's our plan.
Good.
We're working on that.
Glad to see it.
I'd be interested in seeing that as well.
Peter.
Yeah, maybe I should have thought of saying this during the COG update. The Center Region Planning Agency has a new planning director. They've just been hired. They are just about to begin. I can't remember his name, but he's from Brighton, Colorado. And I think arriving and being involved in a process like this would be a really good way for that person to get to know the community and to continue the relationship with the COG, because I know that we have the Council of Governments. I keep being on acronyms tonight. The Council of Governments. So I think that would be a really great opportunity for that individual who has a lot of expertise already.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will move on to the power purchase agreement update.
So I think that the memo that was provided to you, that information is pretty straightforward. Biggest update is last week we did receive notice that the documents were about 90% or more completed. Have not heard anything since that point in time to contradict that or to raise caution. The contribution towards legal fees did increase. That has been confirmed, not necessarily in writing, but verbally again, and we are working on the in writing part, from $50,000 to $60,000. There is 3 different time periods where that would be payable, which we still have not reached any one of those yet, but could be very soon once we have reached the signing of the documents. Timeline and review of all of the approval documents and everything is looking like it will extend it into 2024. And then the various working group members have been notified of that. At this point in time, we're not expected to have a working group meeting in November, not told sometime in December, early December. And there is an action item later on your agenda to reaffirm the district's 15 million kilowatt hour commitment that was approved in February of '23. And I'll just take this time to, as we're talking about it, to share that this was a surprise to us when Dr. Buck, Ms. Brandt, and myself were in the meeting with the consultant the other day. He said that he needed that confirmed now. And I said, well, wait a minute, we thought this was later in the process. And he said, well, I understand, but now is the time. And so we are working with all of the working group members. Pam Adams from the Center Region Council on Governments, Center Region Sustainability Coordinator is working with the other working group members to get that confirmed as well. And so we, that's where we are. We're looking to move forward. And again, another action item for tonight is the fact that we have our current electricity agreement does end in December of '23. And so we have an action item. We've collected bids, and we made a recommendation that we'll ask you to vote on later. I get everything, Gretchen and Peter? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Questions? Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm going to stay, and Mr. Vigilante's going to join me.
Yes. I guess we will not take a break yet. I thought about it. Okay, so yeah, let's move on to the Finance Committee and the draft management discussion and analysis.
As Mr. Vigilante gets set up, this is his first time going through the audit process, obviously, here at the school district. But he and his team have worked very diligently to close our books and be ready for this time of the year when we need to prepare for the, complete the annual financial report, prepare the MD&A so that it all meshes into and we create the financial statements for submission. And so I'm going to go ahead and review the MD&A.
Okay, thank you. So attached behind a one-page memo is an 8-page MD&A, which is behind that will be a 50-page audit, which will be forthcoming. So that means we're getting close to finalizing the 2022-2023 numbers, and that means you'll have a basically a parade of audit information from MD&As into the audit reports coming up, and that means it's almost budget season again, so I apologize for that as well. So I'm going to take a brief highlight of the memo, which again is a synopsis of the MD&A, which is a synopsis of financial statements, but feel free to ask any questions you may have. The key points that I would like to just discuss is the basis of accounting. It does differ between an audit and a budget. A budget is strictly cash basis, an audit is more on an accrual basis. So there are two different bases of accounting to consider when you're talking about audit reports versus budgets. Page 3 of the MD&A presents information on statement of activities. The key items of note include revenues exceeding expenditures by $24.8 million in 2023, reducing net deficit from $29.5 million to $14.5 million, but that is on the accrual basis, not a cash basis. And one of the major aspects of that change in net position, one of the reasons for it, is due to the positive results pertaining to the PSERS and OPEB liabilities, and an improvement of about $7.6 million for governmental activities and $150,000 for business type activities. On top of that, the increase was also largely due to higher wages and higher inflation. So that led to higher earned income tax income, and then to the district, and then also to higher interest rates on cash balances as the Fed made moves to raise interest rates to slow economic growth. And this was again the inflationary factor when the pandemic, the economic effects of the pandemic waned. Going on to page 6, it really outlines the actions taken at previous meetings in terms of committee fund balance and transfers. So a large transfer was a $9 million transfer from the general fund to the capital reserve fund, and then fund balance commitments for health insurance and debt service that the board acted on recently. So with that, these are, I think, the major big number components of the discussion, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have if I can, or investigate them if I can.
Questions for Joe or Randy? Deb?
I don't have a question. I just want to say thanks because I know a lot of work goes into what looks to be a relatively short memo at this stage, and it's a lot of work, so thanks.
Thank you.
This is my favorite part of the audit process. The MD&A is just, it's the most meaningful way to make sense of the kind of work you guys do every day, but the way in which it really relates the money side, basically, to the program side in lots of ways. So it really is helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to budget development. And I'm going to let Joe lead this as well.
Okay. So there is a short presentation and then a budget development schedule as well as attached to the agenda report. Now the budget development, again, with the audit is one timeline. There's actually a second timeline associated with that, so there's going to be a lot of financial information coming to you, especially over the course of the next couple months. But even so, the budget will continue well into 2024. So for the budget development, the budget documents are on the district's website. This includes a history of the Act 1 index. And it will also give you a timeline of events from the PDE and a calendar in which that will fall into for meeting dates. The Act 1 index, as we spoke to just a minute ago, you can see the inflationary impacts on the Act 1 index. Last year, it was probably a bit of sticker shock here, seeing a 4.1% Act 1 index. Well, we beat that by about 25% this year again, as you know, if anybody's questioning, inflation is real and it has an impact. So the upcoming meetings were in a shorter type of time frame for this. They will extend longer into 2022, as I said. But November 20th, there will be a presentation for the opt-out resolution, as well as consideration for the potential revenue impact of alternative tax rates. November 29th, for the finance, there will be a finance committee meeting, which we will review the 2022-2023 audited financial statements, as well as comparative statements for the current and budget year. And then December 4th, we will present the initial proposed preliminary budget with the opt-out resolution. And then December 18th, we will be looking for consideration for an action on an opt-out resolution.
So I understand that this seems like we're fast and furious, and we are, and it is not Joe or Maya's intent. If you look at the budget development timeline or calendar that we've prepared that pulls out important dates that are relevant for our district from the Act 1 calendar. It's early January, I believe it's January 4th is the last day to approve an opt-out resolution, and that is because it is I believe it's 110 days or so prior to the election in April. So when Pennsylvania's election is earlier in April, then that deadline of setting that opt-out resolution is moved up. So what we will, as Joe said, we'll have some information for you on November 20th. Then we'll also have in December at your first meeting in December on December 4th, we will have different revenue proposals for you at the alternative tax rates. Because we're looking at this information so early in December, we've yet to look real in depth at this current year. We're still finishing last year, but between now and then we will do as much analysis and projecting as possible. But as happens every couple of years, especially when we have a presidential election year and the state is a little earlier, they're going to be just projections for the current year and then the projections for the next year. But with an Act 1 index at 5.3%, I think it's very easy for you as a board to say, yes, we are not going to go higher than that as a tax rate. That does not mean that that will be the tax rate. That means that you will not go above that, and we will not do opt-out resolutions. And because you're completing, yes, I'm sorry, we will not apply for resolutions, referendum exceptions, excuse me, referendum exceptions. I need to slow down a little bit. I'm trying to get you to your break. But we will not be applying for referendum exceptions. As far as an actual preliminary budget process, it's no longer required when you pass the opt-out resolution. But I think that as we have shown in past years, we would go through a very rigorous evaluation process through our budget development. And that's what we have planned for this year as well. The only other caveat that I would share is that in addition to the timeline and the budget calendar that's been provided, we may call for an extra finance meeting to have an additional conversation, go through some different analysis or whatever have you. But those have not yet to be, those are yet to be determined. Any questions? Okay.
No.
All right, great. Moving along, capital financing update. I just want to make sure, again, communicating to you, communicating to the public, that, we have a lot going on, especially in the capital financing area. I mean, if Ed Poprick were here, he'd say, "Are you kidding me? You have a lot going on?" Well, we still have a lot going on. We have the North Building project, which, do we have a building permit? Have we broken ground? When do we expect to break ground? You can just answer.
We have a kickoff meeting with the contractor this week.
Okay, so very soon we should have, be breaking ground on the North Building, or on the fiscal plant project. North Building, that work has been going on. So we have those two projects. We're designing the Mount Nittany Elementary, and then we're working on the district-wide facility master plan, as well as many other projects that you have approved that we undertake previously. One of the things that we'll also be preparing for you over the next meeting or two is a list of projects that we expect to undertake for your deferred maintenance schedule over this next fiscal year. And so we just wanted to make sure that you understand where things are getting paid from, where we have the resources. Also, just acknowledging the fact that because of significant inflation, we have a very, very high level estimate for the Mount Nittany Elementary project, which is about $20 million, which is about $10 million more than I had hoped for. And so because of that, if we paid cash for that, which is what we had expected once we had a budget estimate, if we paid cash for that entire project, that would be a significant portion of our capital reserve, which is, if you look in our memo, you'll see is expected to be about, or it is now, in excess of $70 million. And so we've been working with our financial advisor, and in the very near future, we expect to come back with some different proposals, not only looking at that project, but keeping in mind our district-wide facility master plan update, working towards a Park Forest project, that it may include some borrowing and financing opportunities. So that's really the reason for this update tonight. Again, it's not a whole lot of new information, and if you have absolutely any questions, we'll be happy to share those, to entertain those, but I just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you. Questions? Deb?
Again, thanks for all the work. It's not really a question. I just wanted to say it a little bit differently for the benefit of the public. The point, the general point, I think, of the memo is we have a lot of projects. And although it looks like our capital funds balance is significant, it's not going to be enough to fund all of the projects. So we know we're going to have to borrow money sometime. And so the question is, do we borrow some money now? Are the interest rates favorable for that, or do we wait and borrow the money when the fund is depleted a lot more? So that's really what we're looking at. So for anybody who didn't catch that the first time, that's just another way of saying it.
More clear, too.
Thanks.
Amy?
Well, while we're talking about reframing, I've been thinking about this a lot, about our disappointment, about what the cost is going to be for the Mount Nittany Elementary, and regardless, we're going to be disappointed. But when I was thinking about the history of the projects that we've done, we fast-tracked 3 elementary projects in order to get state money. And in retrospect, I'm incredibly grateful that we did that, because construction costs at that time were significantly lower. And had we not been pushed by Crabtree to try and get that state money and completed those projects in time, we would be looking at not only potentially a project at Mount Nittany L, but still working on, say, Spring Creek or one of these other buildings. So while it's frustrating and disappointing and all those other things, and it's a little attitude of gratitude restructuring to think about, wow, we're lucky that we got those 3 done and out of the way before that big spike.
With the lower cost and the state money.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Didn't want to lose sight of that with clarity. Okay. So, thank you very much, everybody.
Randy, I just wanted to add one thing, which is that I had, throughout the past couple years, heard some criticism about how much is in capital reserve. And I'm sitting here tonight listening, thinking, I'm so grateful that we did that under your advisement, because nobody knew what the interest rates would do between the time when this criticism was occurring and now. And so just a thought that of gratitude. So, but thank you, Joe. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now take a 5-minute break. Okay. Okay, we will now begin part 2. We will begin with public comment. So we now have time for additional public comment. Is there anyone in person here who would like to make a public comment? Okay, I don't see any. And anyone joining remotely? No. Okay. So then we will move on to routine approvals. Is there a motion to approve the routine approval listing as presented on the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Deb?
Thanks. I did have a couple of quick questions. I don't think they'll take very long. On item I, it says a new student activity or a new student activity account. I wasn't sure whether we were just establishing a new account or whether we were actually establishing a new activity. That was unclear to me. Or is this just the Roar store is directing some of the things that it's already selling to a specific purpose?
Can you tell which number again?
I. It's the Roar Celebration account.
Yes, it's just an account.
Okay, so they're already selling this stuff, it's just designating it. Okay, cool. I had a question on the mobile ed production agreement, but I think our comments fixed that, which was where's the funding coming from? It was also really helpful to know, which I appreciate, that it sounds like this was something that the kids earned from the fun run.
Correct. And we did it last year as well.
Totally fine.
The board or whoever does the Facebook stuff put it on as one of the things for them.
Totally fine. I was just going to ask, is this something we were offering to other elementary schools? And the answer is no, and that's why, because it's something special that they earned. And the last thing is I just wanted to kind of make a comment under the human resources recommendations with the coaching salaries. I am really hoping that in the future we can look at the coaching salaries and understand a little bit more how these are determined. Because when I look at the recommended coaching salaries for some winter sports, which have demonstrably smaller roster sizes than a couple of the fall sports, but are being offered a higher salary for those sports, I worry that we weren't fairly compensating our fall sports coaches. And so I just am really not understanding where these numbers are coming from. I'm not going to make a big stink about it tonight because I think we have a history. But I really feel like this is something we need to be looking at moving forward so that we make sure that we have equitable coaching salaries that are based in some understandable framework. So, thanks.
I have a question.
Oh, Carlene.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Deb's just said because that is true. And I also had a question with the mobile. And the question is that for 5 sessions? Because I kept saying 5. So
They
it's
do an hour session 5 times 1 day because they can only get a limited number of students in the dome at one time. So we will create a schedule with the building supervisor.
okay. So it's 1 day with 5 sessions. Okay, I wasn't sure if this was going to be repeated 5 different days. Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Laurel.
This sort of tags on to the question about coaches' salaries and understanding them within the context of the full budget. When we just talked about the budget calendar for the coming year and the budget development calendar, that's guided by the various state regulations. But there's another internal calendar of looking at different programs. And before pandemic, certainly we had started to pick a couple of topics each year for deeper dive. There are some we look at every year. And I didn't see that, and that might be a nice thing to work with the Finance Committee and have added so that people know when those will be being looked at, which the ones are that they're going to specialize in this year, because there's some we don't do every year, and when those will be, and adding that to the calendar.
Jim.
I just wanted a clarification. I think it was Ms. Felton came up here and talked about, so with the exchange student, we're voting on basically from this marking period forward.
Yeah, it wasn't, it turns out it was in our board only
Oh.
documents, it did
Yeah.
mention that it would start immediately.
And
So
what did it says in the second half on the?
yeah, on the main agenda, the public agenda, it says that, but then in, we get private
Right,
documents
yeah.
about the student, and in that cover letter, Jean had written starting immediately. So that's unfortunately where the disconnect came. We were clearing that up with the lady who was here, yeah. So Chris was part of that conversation.
That was corrected throughout the day, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's 5 students, not 6.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Dan's pointing at you, Laurel. Can it? Okay. Okay. Then, is there any public comment in person or remotely? There is none. So we will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bach.
Yes.
Dr. Crevecoeur.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Sidney. Yes. Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes. Okay, moving on.
I wanted to add that that thing sounds really fascinating that you're doing there. It is very exciting sounding. I was need to read about it.
It does. Okay, moving on to action items. Agenda item 8A is a motion to approve an MOU with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees regarding healthcare. Can I have there's no public attachment for this item. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Deb?
I just want to point out that it is the same amendment or the same, it's the same change that we've made with our other unions. So it's not, it's just updating.
Yeah, and that's from federal requirements.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any public comment? In person or remotely? No. Then we will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Crevecoeur.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Sidney.
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Dr. Bach.
Yes.
Agenda item 8B is a motion to approve the 2024-2025 Advanced Placement Test waivers. This is shown in attachment 8B. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Laurel?
Thanks. I brought up both when we did this initially and then at the pre-meeting about the CCL agenda, that this would be coming forward, that we have both the AP tests and the IB tests, and both of them provide, at least for some students, college credit. And that was part of the, and they also matter on the U.S. News and World Report, how they rank schools. And I don't understand why we're not including IB. I went and I had some questions about how much it would add. The last update we got on IB said we had 144 individual students enrolled in a la carte last year. So I was wondering how many there are this year, and if we have any idea of how many exams there will be. IB exams, that would be.
Yeah, at this point, we don't know, because they sign up to take those exams, I'm going to say in the summer. So they take them later in the school year. IB.
But I thought the idea for the reason this is being brought forward is because we want students who are signing up for courses in January to know that if they sign up for AP courses next year, that will be part of what will be covered, and that's an incentive to sign up for the courses. And they'll also be signing up for IB courses in January, February, whenever we do the sign-ups.
Right.
So that's why I'm asking about
Yeah, there's
expanding
just-
it.
Right now, there's a lot of unknowns about IB. As far as enrollment, we're going to, like always, have a presentation about IB and how it's doing. So those are the things that we need to look at and weigh. And we got to figure out if, for AP, if this venture is going to bear any fruit, like if it's going to make any changes. And if we're able to see any increase, then we can look to increase and do other programs. So we're just waiting to see if this offering this program or offering this fee waiver will help in encouraging students to take AP courses and AP tests. And if so, then we can look at seeing where it can be applied in other areas such as IB.
The number of students is so much smaller that the total cost addition would be a fairly small percentage, and the logic just doesn't, I don't see the logic in it, unless we're talking about eliminating IB, in which case it makes a lot of sense, but I hadn't heard that suggested. Is that what you meant by there's, okay, I'm just
We have to
checking.
look at information, so that hasn't been presented yet.
Okay,
So,
but we don't have the AP numbers yet either.
Peter? No. Deb?
I think Mr. Johnson already sort of brought up what I was going to suggest, which was I understand the timing of voting on the AP waiver for the coming academic year because they need to know it to plan. But I think I'm already hearing you say before we would consider extending it for another year, we're going to assess what were the effects of providing these waivers, at least in this school year, right? There's always going to be a lag, and how much when we have the data versus when we need to make the next decision. But before we would consider doing this for the 25-26 school year, I would like to see some data and evaluation of the waivers and whether we think we got anything out of it, basically.
Okay. I don't know, could you make that recommendation after 1 year? I mean, I would think we would want to take a look at it down the road. I don't think we would just cancel it after 1 year. I think the kids, that's my understanding.
I'm not suggesting canceling it. I'm just saying we've got to look at the data before we're just not going to not look at the data.
Well, I agree, but I just don't think that that is enough for us to say, okay, well, this didn't work after just trying it for 1 year.
That's understandable. I'd still like to see the data.
Okay.
Peter?
I believe that the motion on the floor is about voting for this particular motion, which we have already discussed before, not about IB requirements and IB tests.
That is correct.
Okay, I would like to call the question.
Excuse me, we have not discussed this before. This is the first time it's come to us. It is the first time it's come to us.
No, I'm calling the question.
Okay.
Please tell me what that means.
That means I would like us to vote on the actual motion that we have before us.
So I will read that again. Let's see. Is a motion to approve, so agenda item 8B is a motion to approve the 2024-2025 advanced placement test waivers. This is shown in attachment 8B. And I believe we already had a motion and a second? Yes. So we will go on to public comment. Is there any public comment?
Yes.
Point of order. Ms. Zidney is not a member of the public.
I certainly am.
No, she is a board member, and I believe that she is out of order right now.
Dr. Etter, would you like to help us with this one?
I would agree, Laurel. I do believe you are a member of the public, but I think you're running around the rules that we usually operate by. And, I don't want to belabor the point, but I did support you when we were back at College Township when a similar issue came up. So I'm not picking on you tonight. But the issue of this fee waiver has been discussed at prior meetings, I think at length.
The fee waiver for this coming year, not the following year. This is the first time it's come to us, period.
I'm not prepared to say I agree or disagree with that. I don't recall the years that we discussed it for being, but the general subject itself has been discussed at length. And what you were talking about was something with the IB program, I think was very different than the agenda item. So Laurel has returned to her seat, so I would suggest that we call the roll.
Okay, let's go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leo?
Is this on the calling the question motion or on the motion itself? Well, Peter.
Okay, let's have a vote on calling the question.
No,
So,
I don't think it got a second, so.
so do we have a second?
Okay.
I think it's up
Okay.
to the chair to determine what the chair wants to do.
Okay.
Okay, the chair would like to go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Okay. Sorry.
Dr. Duffy, yes.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
No.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Okay, that motion has passed, and we will move on to agenda item 8C, which is a motion to approve the purchase of athletic supplies. This is shown in attachment 8C. And is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
Question.
Yes.
Well, on that page, one of the page, they had said something about pricing for the items is provided by sportsmen have been established by the Pennsylvania Department of General Services. What exactly does that mean?
It means they have been awarded a competitive contract through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, so they can be treated by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as a competitive bid unilaterally, even if we do not go through this bid process here, or this procurement process here.
Interesting. Okay, I also have other questions. The prices are all over the place when I was like comparing them, and I wondered if we added the value of the quality of what we're purchasing, because some things like the first place Super Band went from $29.95 per item to $5 from BSN Sports, and that's a big difference. And there were other differences like that too. So this is only giving us the price. I wonder if we dealt with some of these companies before, that we could also put quality besides just the prices.
Yes, we did, and before going out to bid, our purchasing manager, Keith Dingwall, did go out and get a standardized product from the manufacturer, and that's what was compared across all of these vendors.
Okay, because this memo just made it seem like we were just looking at the prices, and I know that's important, but like I said before, you know, some of these prices were like, some of them were like double, so that just made me think that maybe we're not getting a good quality for that price.
I understand that, and we did attempt to, like I said, go through the manufacturers and get a standardized product across the whole board. And that's one of the major reasons for going out and doing something like this, is to see if there is, you're getting the correct prices or the best prices. If you would just go to the same vendor each time, even if they are preferred, you don't necessarily know if there is a better opportunity out there for you. And this is the first time we've gone in a bulk quote type of arrangement for athletic supplies, and if this goes well, we may look to do it again for the following fiscal year, so that they can do a blanket purchase order. They know who their qualified vendors are, and then they can just order the supplies from that point forward and cover that the whole year. And the list that we are getting, just as well, is coming up through the athletic director, and that's coming from the coaches themselves. So this is a way to sort of work together to make everybody's life a little bit easier, and maybe even save the district a few dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then we are, is there any public comment? Okay, then we will have a roll call vote.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Okay, that has passed. Agenda item 8D is a motion to accept electricity rates for the period beginning December 2023. This is shown in attachment 8D. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Any public comment? Then we will have a roll call vote.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
That item has passed. Agenda item 8E is a motion to approve electricity volume commitment for the power purchase agreement. This is shown in attachment 8E. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion? Deb?
I'm just going to explain for the benefit of the public that I'm going to vote no, which is identical to the vote that I made in February, because we're basically being asked to replicate a vote. I'm not trying to derail the project. I'm not in favor of the project. I just thought it was not the right amount, so I voted no then, so I'm going to vote no now, because I'm not exactly sure why we're voting again. So, thanks.
Laurel?
Same.
Any other questions? Okay, is there public comment? None. Then we will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Anderson,
No.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Dr. Buck,
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore,
No.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
and Ms. Sidney.
No.
Okay, agenda item 8F is a motion to approve a change order for the Mount Nittany Elementary LGI space renovation. This is shown in attachment 8F. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion?
Question.
Yes.
It's a change order. What was the previous, do we have a previous estimate on that? Being a change order?
Mr. Fisher's coming
'Cause
up.
it's not on the list.
I'm sorry, this is the
It's
first
a
change.
change order. Did we have a previous estimate on this or the cost of it before it was changed to the 14,000?
Change order, the 14,000 is in addition to, it should be on the list on the bottom of the memo. It's 4 capital projects.
I don't see it.
On page 2.
Yeah, the whole list that you,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. So, we didn't believe the scope was correct in the original change order. The exact amount, I don't recall off the top of my head. It's been kind of an ongoing, but it was reduced, and we asked for backup for everything extra that they had to do, for the change that was asked for by the instructional team. But
Okay,
the
then-
original, so the original, we never presented it. We got rid of the scope of work and the proposed change order, and we said, we don't think that's right. You need to back that up with certified payrolls and, actually actual invoices of materials. So that whole process took some time.
okay.
Does that answer your question? or-
It does, because I was looking back, because I'm thinking it was a change order. I'm thinking, what was it initially? And then I said, was it even presented? So exactly that point that you're saying, it was just something that was added on later? And
It
then
was. It was in the middle
you
of
just-
construction where the team in the building asked that to better help the students and give the space more flexibility. They wanted to add a door that was allow the restroom to be more accessible. And to do that, we had to adjust a wall, adjust some of the plumbing, adjust some of the electrical, and so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Dan?
And Mike, just looking at the memo, these decisions were made some time ago, and we're now
They were,
in
yes.
the position of having to compensate the contractor for this work, even though the work is now done and completed and so on. We're just simply making this approval so that we can cut the check to pay
Correct.
the contractor for their work.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, is there any public comment? Then we will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Dr. Buck,
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sidney,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
That item has passed. Agenda item 8G is a motion to approve a fire alarm system upgrade for Panorama Village. This is shown in attachment 8G. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Any public comment? Then we will have a roll call vote.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Beck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecoeur?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Beaver?
Yes.
That item is passed. Agenda item 8H is a motion to approve an Indiana University of Pennsylvania research proposal with Ms. Lauren Lucas. This is shown in attachment 8H. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Deb?
Thanks. And I apologize, I didn't write down what page this was on. But I think the proposal stated that the studied intervention, which is up to 20 minutes per day of a specialized math instruction, would be provided by a math interventionist, which I believe is not the researcher.
Correct. So the researcher, Lauren, are you online with us?
And so if it's not the researcher, is it a math interventionist that's already on staff?
Yes, it will be the interventionist at Coral. So Lauren is a school psychologist at
Right.
Coral in Ferguson Township. So she will be observing within those intervention classrooms.
And so then would the interventions being proposed for this research study be replacing other interventions that might otherwise have been provided? Or does this limit the availability of the math interventionist to give, I'm trying to understand if this is going to displace other interventions that students would benefit from, or if this will be in addition to, and if it's in addition to, how does that fit into that person's day?
Sure. Do we have her? Because I can answer,
That's
but I
her
don't want to
hand
answer
first.
incorrectly. Okay.
She's there.
Lauren, go ahead.
She needs to unmute.
Hello, sorry, my mute was not being able to be unmuted, but this is Lauren on Zoom.
Lauren, did you hear the question?
I did, yes. So the intervention, the maximum is 20 minutes a day. The minimum is once per day, and it's a 2-minute intervention dose. So the students who are allowed in the intervention have to perform at a certain digits correct per minute. So most likely, students who are already provided with intervention through the school systems will not be able to qualify for this intervention because their performance is lower than what the expected performance is for the intervention for this study.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Well, that answers part of my question. So it's not displacing intervention that would have been given to other students, but how does the math interventionist have time in their day to add this to their schedule?
Yeah, so the intervention would take place when students arrive at school in the morning. So this is before they even get to the classrooms. The math interventionists have duties in the morning, and I will take the place of their duties in the morning to complete this, and then they will complete it in the afternoon before leaving school. And then I will also take the duties over of the math interventionist. They usually just stand at the door at the entryway to let students enter and then leave.
Okay, thank you. That helps. It's just, it was clear that an adult was being asked to do something that they weren't otherwise going to do. And I wanted to make sure we weren't either asking them to do more work without compensation or having to pay someone to do what they should have been doing. So, thank you.
Any other, Dan?
I first want to acknowledge Deb's questions, which are very reasonable and make a lot of sense, and a real good understanding about how instructional systems are organized in the school over the course of the day. Thanks, Deb. And Lauren, I want to tell you that I've probably participated in reviewing 24 different dissertation research requests, and this comes the closest to the kinds of things that I think that we should be doing through research that's based in our schools, because this is really focused on fine-tuning the ways in which we are providing support to kids through the work of the interventionist. I have a couple of questions for you, and one is like how many students will be in each treatment condition? Do you think there are 5 treatment groups, right? So how many students would be in each of the treatment groups? Can she hear me?
Maybe not.
Lauren, are you able to still hear us?
She's muted again.
Hi, sorry, somebody has to give me permission to unmute myself every time. Yes, I can hear you. So there are approximately 60 second grade students across Coral Street in Ferguson Township Elementary School, which is where I am a school psychologist. So there are 5 intervention groups and then 1 control group. So there would be approximately 10 students per group.
Okay. That made sense statistically. That was what I was hoping your answer was going to be. All right, well, beyond that, I don't have any other questions, but I just am glad that you're adding value to what we understand about how to help kids more effectively and more efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Any public comment? Then we will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecourt?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leo?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Branch?
Yes. That item has passed. Agenda item 8I is a motion to approve an agreement with Dr. Sue Cromwell for professional development services for the administrative team. This is shown in attachment 8I. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Laurel?
Yes, can you talk a little about how you picked this particular provider and what you expect this to be like for the administrative group?
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is an individual that Jeannie Andrews and I worked with for over 20 years at Penn State. She led professional development, including leadership development at Penn State for probably more than 20 years because she was still there when I left. So she is retired from Penn State now, but she is an outstanding presenter. She's knows what she's doing, and it's just that length of experience that when she said she was looking for something to do in retirement, I said, well, could you put on your leadership course for us? Now, this is not the full leadership course because that was a 10-week course. This is 3 sessions. But that's how we got there.
We want professional development for the administrators. We had used previously Bartel and Bartel. They had met twice with the administrators and had leadership development as well as that. And when I had looked back, this contract is for $16,700.
Up to. It depends on how many individuals take
Okay.
advantage of her one-on-one coaching.
Okay. The previous time when they'd worked with Bartel, it had been $3,250 for a full day, which I assume is about 6 hours, similar to the 3 2-hour sessions. And they also had an add-on for these half-hour type things. They would be different ones that came out to about $5,000. So when I had looked at this, I really had sticker shock. And that is why I asked the question about her. I went and looked and didn't see her having worked with other school districts or something. So
Well, she has not.
that's why I'm hesitant about this, which is both a financial cost but also a time cost.
Well, I cannot speak to Bartel's bills. I was not involved with them, and that was a good number of years ago.
2018 and 19.
I was going to say it was before COVID.
It was right before pandemic, yes. And they also worked with the board right before pandemic.
I cannot address what Bartel charged. I don't know if there were other charges involved.
I don't think they offered the individual sessions either.
They did not offer individual sessions, no.
That is included in the amount that I'll forward the memo.
I
from that.
understand.
Well, it might have been included on the piece of paper, but they didn't do it because I was
It
here.
was an optional thing, so, anyway. I guess it goes to the general idea of how we evaluate the cost of professional services when we don't have anything to look at. And the only thing I had to look at was what was done previously, and we'd heard good things about, so that's why I was asking. But thank you for the background.
Yeah, I would second your comments about,
Oh,
I
yeah,
have
you
taken
would.
classes with Dr. Cromwell and Ms. Flanagan, too, and I think they're excellent.
Deb?
Just a little bit to Laurel's point, would it be helpful, or do you know, like, what is the hourly rate? Like, if no one took advantage of the half hours, individual sessions, what might the cost be? You know what I mean? Like, the compensation just says up to a total of $16,700 for presenter time and materials for all 3 general sessions and the individual coaching sessions. So, I mean, I could do the math. That's why I asked how many people, right? And maybe, like, is that the right assumption of an hourly rate? Or maybe the 2-hour sessions are at a different rate than the half-hour sessions? Like, I'm just wondering how we're expecting the invoices to come.
I did not ask her what the individual coaching, if it was a different rate or not.
Okay. Someone came up with 16,700, so I'm guessing there was some math that happened.
I know she was very thoughtful because she knew we're a school district and she didn't want to charge us too much.
Right. So I guess it would be helpful if that compensation section was a teeny bit longer and said, the fee for each 2-hour session would be this set amount, and the fee for each half-hour individual coaching session would be this amount if elected, for a total maximum of. Then I think it would be easier for us to understand how much we thought it might cost. So just as a suggestion.
Peter?
I mean, I wouldn't want to ruin my reputation by getting into a heated agreement with Mrs. Idney on this at this moment, but I do think that it's important that we know what the disaggregated costs would be for the different services. I mean, I know it's not actually a large amount of money, $16,700, but not knowing the difference in there when we are being asked to vote on it, I think that the detail does kind of matter.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Johnson, you look like you want to say something.
Do you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I am mindful that the first presentation is scheduled for November 15th. So, right, there is a timing issue, and I don't know if that's where Mr. Johnson was going to go. Like, I
Yes.
personally would be okay, I think, with some trust, but asking for that breakdown.
I would be happy
now.
to get that to you.
So I could probably vote yes, because it's not a break-the-bank amount of money. If we can get that information
I can
given
get
to
that
us.
to you tomorrow.
So, me personally, that would be my thought. Thanks.
Yes, you read my mind.
Okay, Laurel?
I can also vote yes, because nickel and diming each little expense is not what I'm looking at. But I am looking for a general, thinking about where these things came from. As I said, that it would be nice in the memos in general when we're asked to do these things to have some sense of how this compares to the market rate or whatever. And sometimes you pay more because someone is worth that much more. So that was why I raised the question.
Dan?
And somewhere between, as valuable as it is having that itemized spreadsheet for the various athletic materials, which was an incredible level of scrutiny at one extreme versus this more general overview of the costs involved. It's nice to have something itemized, a little more in the middle, as we're suggesting, I think, for future practice. So but in terms of what the individual session costs might be and the whole group training might be like, that kind of thing would be pretty straightforward. Would it be not hard at all? Because as Deb said, somebody sat down and figured out those numbers. It'd be helpful to know what they were thinking for future reference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then we will move on to public comment. And there is none, so we will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Krabappel.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Beaver.
Yes.
Ms. Brand.
Yes.
Dr. Buck.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Agenda
you.
item,
She said
I said thank you.
oh. You're welcome. Agenda item 8J is a motion to approve a 2023-2024 expulsion waiver agreement. There is no attachment. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion? Is there any public comment? Then we will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Ms. Brand.
Yes.
Dr. Buck.
Yes.
Dr. Krabappel.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Agenda item 8K is a motion to approve a 2023-2024 agreement. There is no attachment. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Any public comment? Then we will have a roll call vote.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Sidney.
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Ms. Brand.
Yes.
Dr. Buck.
Yes.
Dr. Krabappel.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. And now we'll move on to future meetings. Looking ahead to future meetings, we have the November 14th Policy Development Committee, November 20th, the regular board meeting, November 29th, Finance Committee meeting, December 4th, Board Reorganization meeting, and Committee of the Whole regular board meeting. And now I would like to call for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.